Subscribe the channel for latest updates. Press the bell icon. Get ready for the dictation. At the count of 3, 2, 1, start. The precise issue which arose for consideration in the present case was whether prisoners who were required to do labor as part of their punishment should necessarily be paid wages for such work at the rates prescribed under minimum wages law. The appeals was made by various state governments against the decision of their high courts, wherein it was held that prisoners should be paid wages and that the present rates of wages paid to them were too meager and therefore were liable to be enhanced. It was argued that when hard labor was made a part of punishment as lawfully imposed, it could be equated with the normal employer employee phenomenon so as to entitle the prisoner to the social and legislative benefit which a free employee gets outside the walls of the prison. Articles 23 and 24 of the Constitution clearly declared the right against exploitation, wherein there was an absolute prohibition against forced labor, an expression which seemed to be collocated with the word beggar. Under Article 21, like any other workman, a prisoner was also entitled to wages, and therefore the only question that remained to be considered was at what rate should the prisoners be paid for their work. The court specifically declared that it was lawful to employ the prisoners sentenced to rigorous imprisonment to do hard labor whether he consented to do it or not. It was open to the jail officials to permit other prisoners also to do any work which they chose to do, provided such prisoners make a request for that purpose. It was imperative that the prisoners should be paid equitable wages for the work done by them. In order to determine the quantum of equitable wages payable to prisoners, the state concerned should constitute a wage fixation body for making recommendations. Therefore, the court directed the state governments to fix the wage rate, and until the state government had taken any decision on such recommendations, every prisoner was to be paid wages for the work done by him at such rates or revised rates as the government concerned fixed in the light of the observations made above. The court also recommended the states concerned to make law for setting apart a portion of the wages earned by the prisoners to be paid as compensation to deserving victims of the offense, the commission of which entailed the sentence of imprisonment to the prisoner, either directly or through a common fund to be created for this purpose or in any other feasible mode. Another aspect of the judgment is the victimological approach it adopts. It observed rehabilitation of the prisoner need not be by closing the eyes towards the suffering victims of the offense. A glimpse at the field of victimology reveals two types of victims: direct victims, that is, those who are alive and suffering on account of the harm inflicted by the prisoner while committing the crime; indirect victims, that is, those who are dependents of the direct victims of crimes who undergo sufferings due to deprivation of their breadwinner. Restorative and reparative theories have developed from the aforesaid thinking. These are not theories of punishment, Rather, their argument is that sentences should move away from punishment of the offender towards restitution and reparation aimed at restoring the harm done and calculated accordingly. Restorative theories are therefore victim centered, although in some versions they encompasses the notion of reparation to the community for the effects of crime. They envisage less resort to custody with onerous community based sanctions requiring offenders to work in order to compensate victims and also contemplating support and counseling for offenders to reintegrate them into the community. Such theories therefore tend to act on a behavioral premise similar to rehabilitation, but their political premise is that compensation for victims should be recognized as more important than notions of just punishment on behalf of the state.